Hello, my friends. All right, hold on. Facebook is being weird. Facebook! What on earth is going on here with Facebook? Hello, YouTube. Give me a minute. Facebook's being weird. What on Facebook? All right, I'm going to have to do it again. Let's do it again. Bear with me. Bear with me. I do not understand what's happening with Facebook right now. It is, oh, I'm an idiot. I had to post it over what I needed. Okay. Oh, let me fix this. Let me move it. We can turn that off. Okay. Are we there? Yes, we're here. All right. Facebook's all fuzzy. I do not know what's happening with Facebook. You are plugged in. Oh, it's just one of those days. Well, hello, my friends. Hello, Ann. Hi, JD. You cannot even get on Facebook. Yeah, I don't. Facebook's messed up. Hello, Facebook. All right, my friends. Jill Osborne, Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Sunday, April 6th, 2025, and it is time for another live IC support group meeting. And I'm trying to fix this. Okay, hold on. All right. Now I'm going to start wheezing. Allergies are so bad here right now. Oh my God. Okay. It's time for another live IC support group meeting. And it's been an interesting couple of days. I'm just going to say right now, allergies are so incredibly terrible that my nose is running and I feel a little asthma. So bear with me if I'm a little kerfuffled. I'm a little kerfuffled. Anyway, my purpose in doing these meetings is to make you strong, knowledgeable, and informed. I want you to be able to walk into your doctor's offices with confidence, being able to have a really good, important discussion. Being able to have a really good discussion about your treatment options. Okay, Deb said everything's fine on the Facebook feed. Okay, we'll cross our fingers. We're gonna cross our fingers. I'm just goofy today. I'm very, very goofy today. You'll have to bear with me. I walked outside for 10 minutes and I just came in completely stuffed up. That's how bad allergies are. Okay, so today, normally when I do these meetings, I spend 30 minutes and we talk about something educational, something that will empower you, something that will help you find new therapies, something that will give you a better idea on how to cope with your IC, how to cope with flares, all that sort of stuff. And of course, I am happy to take any question you have. Nothing is off the table. The more embarrassing it is, the more I'm willing to talk about it, because there's no shame in having this. No shame at all. I don't want you carrying any blame. I don't want you to uh, feel like this is your fault. I don't want you feeling like you're damaged goods. I don't want you feeling like you're a poor wife or a poor mother or a poor daughter or a poor sister or a poor friend. You're not. You're just hurt. And our job now is to try to understand how you're hurt and why you're hurt and try to figure out how to heal that. And that's where we use something called phenotyping. But before we get there, a couple of things that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about icy-friendly pasta, because a lot of you don't think you can have pasta again. You can absolutely have pasta again. I'm going to give you some great ideas, but I'm going to take just 2 or 3 minutes, and I need to talk about something that's happening that's very, very, very concerning for us, and that is all of the cuts in research at the National Institutes of Health. The National Institutes of Health right now has lost potentially 2 generations of key IC researchers, key researchers in cancer, key research in all sorts of diseases, from HIV to MS to lupus to all sorts of cancers. I don't think a lot of people really understand how important the U.S. National Institutes of Health is. In the IC community, they have done the vast bulk of our research. They have invested $100 million in the last 20 years trying to understand IC. Every key breakthrough we've had has come from the National Institutes of Health. They were the ones who found fungal infection. They were the ones who confirmed viral infection. And one of the ways they do that, I mean, listen, we've got a great research team around the world. And I'm going to tell you right now, the researchers in Europe are incredibly good. They're creative. They're dynamic. They go where other people don't go. They will do small studies that are very, very encouraging, like our PEA study and the lactoferrin study last summer, which was found to heal Hunner's lesions. But then a lot of doctors and a lot of medical associations want validated information. They're like, oh, don't give us a little fluff study. We need something more rigorous. And that's what the National Institutes of Health does. And so we've had several generations of IC research teams. We've had the IC Clinical Trial Group. We've had the IC Clinical Research Network. And most recently, we've had something called the Multidisciplinary Approach to the Study of Pelvic Pain, the MAP Research Network. That MAP Research Network is critical to everything we've learned in the United States about pelvic pain, IC and pelvic pain. And they just ordered more and more cuts. 2.6 billion. They just tried to cancel 2.6 billion in research grants. They have eliminated key research leaders. We're talking the top tier research leaders. These are guys who have been studying all these medical conditions for 30 years. And more importantly, they've also eliminated the grants for the new young researchers. Because how do we get these great researchers? We got to start young. We got to start nurturing them young. We've got to start encouraging them to study all sorts of different things. I've always said, if I could go back and get a PhD, I would get it in drug-resistant infections. I would love to do that. This is where these young scholars go to follow their lines of research and to get trained in how to do good research and to get nurtured and to get supported. So tragically, the drug pipeline, the research pipeline, based upon what's happened in the last week, we're going to lose 10 to 20 years of study because they're trying to stop everything. Now, a federal judge just ruled that they have to fulfill all those contracts, but the writing is on the wall. They want to stop medical research. I don't know why. Why would you stop cancer research? Why would you stop pediatric cancer research? Why would you stop Alzheimer's research? Why would you do that? What's the gain? It makes no freaking sense. The cuts are so severe that storing samples may become impossible. So in the IC studies, for example, they've got hundreds of urine samples over time from a group of patients so that they can go back and look at what's changed over time. If they can't pay to support that, what's going to happen to that? All these critical research samples will be thrown into the trash. And so I'm not being political right here. I am talking about healthcare. I am talking about health in general. This is not left or right. This is not red or blue. This is not about Republicans or Democrats. This is about the future of health research and healthcare in the United States. We were the leader, and we are losing that because of irrational choices to cut medical research. And I have no idea what's happened to the IC research. I emailed all the docs I know, and I just said, please, I pray to God you still have your research money. Now, I will tell you this. I'm a researcher. I've done a lot of research in 30 years. It took me 25 years to be invited to a CDC grant on IC. I was invited a year ago, right before I got diagnosed with breast cancer. I did my proposal. I gave it to the university that we were working with. We were funded last fall. Like, oh my God, 30 years. You want to talk to somebody? You want to meet somebody who might lose their grant? Look at me. Look at me. Look at the big IC research centers around the country. This is not okay. This is not okay. Nobody should be laughing about this. Lives are at stake right now. And for those of us who have had cancer, we dream of having a cure for cancer. We're not going to get that cure if they cut the damn cancer teams. And that's what they're doing right now. So I encourage everybody, doesn't matter where you are, you need to call your senator. More importantly, you need to call your Republican, your congressman, whoever they are, and say, you protect that money. We need that research money. Millions could die. But more importantly, we might lose a cure. We could lose a cure to cancer. If that young researcher who is destined to find that cure isn't nurtured when they're younger, they'll never go into it. So please, please, please support the National Institutes of Health and the Center for Disease Control. This is dire. David Kessler was the chairman of the director of the FDA years and years ago. You may remember him because he was the one who finally got the tobacco CEOs, held them accountable for the addiction properties of smoking and how they suppressed it and hid it. And they knew that they were creating tremendous addiction with their products. And David Kessler gave a presentation last week that just scared the living daylights out of me about the future of healthcare. And he just said, listen, if this doesn't change in the next week, we're toast. I mean, we're done for 20 years. We will lose 20 years of progress in 5 days based upon these cuts. So I want to plant that seed, okay? Because I'm worried. I am not, hold that thought. I am not one prone to panicking anymore. I have always been the calm port in the storm for everybody who has known me. And I'm right here like, oh my God, how did this happen? I'm terrified for the future of IC research right now. Okay? So please protest, write to your people, get them to support research. Okay? Okay, now on to something better. Hold on one sec. Okay, to get my samples. Oh, all right. On to something lighter. We just need to be a little bit light. We need to be a little bit comfortable right now. So, I have this big list of things I want to do videos on, and short videos and long videos and things like that. And one of the ones that I've been trying to do for the last week, and I just haven't been able to because I've been so freaking busy, is on icy friendly pasta. Because so many of you ask me, can I have pasta? And the answer is yes, you can have pasta. You gotta be kind of smart about it. So, there's so many different ways I can go with this. Obviously, a tomato-based pasta is going to be tricky. This is the pasta sauce that I get. Now remember, I'm not bladder wall driven, I'm pelvic floor driven. And what my phenotype means is that I have a healthy bladder wall, and so I am not very diet sensitive. I was when I was much younger, I'm not now. So if you have Hunner's lesions, especially if you have active Hunner's lesions right now, listen, red pasta sauce is off the chart for you. Think about, the bladder is irritated by quantity of acid. A cup of tomato sauce represents a dozen or 20 tomatoes that have all been cooked down and concentrated. There's a ton of acid in this. There's a ton of acid in tomato sauce. So again, if you have Hunner's lesions, not the brightest thing to do. But one workaround, but again, I don't think you should do this if you've got Hunner's lesions, but for, say, the typical estrogen atrophy patient, is you can use some pre-leaf. 2 tablets of pre-leaf will reduce 95% of the acid in, I think, a cup of tomato sauce. So if you've got to go to grandma's house and have spaghetti, her homemade spaghetti sauce, bring some pre-leaf with you. This is a way to do it. Okay, but there's a lot more types of pasta than tomato-based pasta. So for example, you can do an Alfredo sauce, as long as you have a working gallbladder. I don't have a working gallbladder. That's a little bit hard for me right now. My gallbladder fled my body a year ago. But an Alfredo sauce, a white sauce for your pasta, is fantastic. It's flavorful. It's flexible. You can throw veg in. You can do all sorts of things. But honestly, back when my IC and my bladder was so sensitive, one of my favorite things to do was to just do pasta noodles with a little bit of olive oil or a little bit of butter and fresh Parmesan. I could eat that all day, every day. But if you wanted something a little bit creamier, go for an Alfredo sauce. It's wonderful. And of course, I know some people have never had pesto-based pasta, but pesto pasta is fantastic. It's light, it's fresh, it's flavorful, throw in a little bit of garlic, perfectly bladder friendly. Now, the type of pasta you get is interesting because, I don't do particularly well with a wheat-based pasta. I get very bloated and gassy. And I, you know how it is whenever you chow down on pasta, and then you're going to bed that night and you take your clothes off and you see your remarkably large stomach. It's like, where did that come from? Where did this giant stomach come from? Well, it comes from all the carbs. And for some reason, at least for me, wheat-based pasta is just the worst. If I were to get a wheat-based pasta, I would only get like a burrata pasta from Italy, I would not get an American pasta because the American wheat products are really contaminated with glyphosate from Roundup, and that's very controversial. That's one thing I agree with RFK Jr. is getting rid of glyphosate in wheat products. I think that's a good idea. But the pasta I generally do is a gluten-free pasta. And I will either get a quinoa pasta, it's in a turquoise box, or I will get a corn and rice pasta. And they're just as good. And you know what? They don't bloat. There's no bloating at all. It's fantastic. Our favorite, it was funny this morning. I was digging because I wanted to do something. I just wanted to open up some fresh ideas for you. And I went back to my childhood because my mother had me cooking dinner by 6th grade. Let me tell you, my sister and I, we were taught how to cook at a very young age. We took responsibility. I think I cooked by the time I was like in 7th grade. I was cooking 2 or 3 family meals a week. I mean, and our favorite things that we did were like the Sunset cookbooks, the old, which I still have all the old Sunset cookbooks. We cooked almost everything in these cookbooks, but my favorite cookbook you're going to see is the Italian cookbook. And you can see, listen, guys, this is 50 years old. It's that old. You can see how messed up it is. But if you can see this pasta on the front, this was our staple. This is a carbonara sauce pasta. And so basically, it's a little bit of sauteed mild Italian sausage or a little bit of ham, little bit of fresh parsley. I usually sauteed mushrooms in it. And then, so what you do is in a pan, you saute your mild sausage and you saute, if you're going to use a little bit of ham, that's fine. A little bit of mushrooms, that's fine. At the same time, you're boiling your pasta. Okay, so when the sausage is done and the pasta is done, you drain the sausage, you drain the pasta, put it back in the pan, and you put the sausage on top of it with some olive oil or butter. I preferred olive oil. And you just toss it. Put fresh parsley in there, toss it. And then put fresh Parmesan, toss it. I'm telling you, perfectly bladder friendly. Look at that picture there. Does that I'm sorry, it's an old cookbook, but that's what it looks like. And it's so good. Carbonara pasta. Now let's talk about cheese for a moment, because a lot of the old the old diet list said cheese was bad for IC, and that's not true. We ended up reclassifying the vast majority of cheeses to try it about 10 years ago. The only cheeses that we suggest that you avoid are going to be like the hot, spicy cheeses, like hot pepper cheese, which is actually really big out here in California. We have the Sonoma Cheese Factory, and they're known for the super, super spicy cheese. And of course, that's not good. But the spices, the cheeses that you should be able to enjoy are going to be a mozzarella cheese, which is very mild, cheddar cheese, and my personal favorite is going to be the cheese that I always go for is going to be a Parmesan cheese or any of those dried cheeses. Could eat them with absolutely no bladder irritation. Again, even when my IC was off the charts and I was peeing every 15 minutes, that was my go-to. So I don't want you to restrict yourself. I just want you to try new things. I can remember when I was dating Matt, who was a guy that I almost married several years ago. God bless his soul. He's no longer with us. He had his way of cooking stuff and I had my way of cooking stuff. And one day we did a head-to-head challenge. He made his and I made mine. And the irony is he hated mine and loved his, and I hated his and loved mine. Because how you grow up with the foods that you eat are very, very important. But something like IC requires that you be a bit on the creative side and be willing to try new things. Go for fresh, light pastas. And so let's just say you're terrified of tomato, as you should be if you've got Hunner's lesions or very severe bladder sensitivity. Tomato sauce is dire. I mean, there's just way too much acid in tomato sauce. But one of the things that you could do, kind of as a test, is get those really sweet yellow cherry tomatoes. And they're like little pears. They're pear shaped or cherry shaped. The yellow tomatoes are much lower in acid than red tomatoes, and the riper they are, the lower the acid levels. Because what happens is the fruit is ripening on the vine, the sugars are building, and the acids are decreasing. So if you can go to a farmer's market and buy fresh tomatoes from a farmer's market, especially yellow tomatoes, that might be okay for you. So anyway, what you can do is you can cut those cherry tomatoes in half and saute them with some garlic and something else, and then put that on pasta with some fresh parm. That should be okay too. So don't be afraid of pasta. Be willing to try new things and go fresh and light. It's interesting that if you were to go to Europe and you go to Italy, their pasta is not like our pasta. I mean, the American pasta that I grew up with was my mom sauteing a pound of ground beef and pouring in that packet of pasta seasoning that was filled with salt and MSG, and then putting tomato paste in it. That's what we grew up with. Well, that's not the pasta of Italy. It's not. There's this fresh and light and flavorful. And that's what we want to do again. Because ultimately, this is about creating an environment that will help your body heal. And we do that with fresh foods, not fast foods, not heavily preserved foods. Give your body the foods it needs, the energy it needs from real fresh food. All right, so you guys, we're live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. And so let's see. Donna says, we're talking about the research. I paid attention early because I'm included because of the DEI. Yes. Let's be real. I know firsthand how this person feels. I hope that it is not too late. When you harm one group of people, it will not take long before it affects all. Girl, you are absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more, which is why I was out with my sign talking specifically about research at the NIH and CDC at the protest yesterday. You'd be amazed at the number of doctors and nurses I talk to who are so worried about this right now. Donna says, Pre-Leaf is her friend. She uses Rao's Alfredo. I make pesto homemade. It's so good. I try to do organic as much as I can, not always successful. How about a butter sauce and brown rice pasta? That sounds really, really good. And you can always do a veggie pasta dish or use seafood for variety. I'm not a seafood girl, so I never turn to seafood for anything. I'm a terrible Norwegian. I don't know. I just didn't grow up with seafood because my mom didn't like it. And as Donna says, she was stationed overseas, and the fewer the ingredients, the better. Keep it really, really simple. I love you too, honey. I do. All right. Anne says, just got retested to see if my E. coli disappeared. Well, Anne, what did it say? What were your results? Judy said, I wanted to let you know I made it from Washington State to Yuma, Nevada without any IC issues. Yeah, baby. Woo! I had vaginal Valium suppositories, used my body heating pad. It worked like a charm. I've used so many of your helpful travel tips, Jill. Thank you. Body heating pads are my go-to. Listen, if you got to travel anywhere, slapping on a body heating pad over your pelvis is important. Let me go get one so you can see what they are. Hold on. All right. All right, my friends. Here, hold on. Body heat heating pads. Let me tell you, if there's one thing that I have used consistently for the last 30 years, it is body heat heating pads. You see how thin they are? And they'll push out heat for like 8 to 12 hours. So, and this is my last one. Yikes. Okay, I've got to buy some more from my shop. Okay, so the way they work is you just take off the top, pull it out. Look at how flat that is. So you can be wearing a heating pad at work. You can be wearing a heating pad on a bus. You can be wearing a heating pad on a trip, and nobody has a clue that you have a heating pad on. These are so discreet. And generally what you do, so to activate it, you pull off the pad. All right. So here it is. And where I would put it like right here. But I'd put it obviously on my underwear. Right? So like right there. Just put it, you don't put it on your skin. Don't put it on your skin. You have to put it on something that's cotton. And you know what? Because my back is being funky, I'm going to put it, my bladder's fine. My pelvis is fine. But what got me is my left psoas muscle. So I'm going to put it back here. Yeah, excellent. And so you can buy body heat heating pads in the IC Network shop. It's like $3.99 for 3 or $4 for 3, somewhere in there. I've only raised the price once in 25 years because these are the must go-to for anybody who's struggling with flares and traveling or sitting. Body heat heating pads are the bomb. Love, 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 love them. Cindy said, I'm going to grow your own yellow tomatoes. I miss my fresh tomatoes. You know what I really love the most are those big yellow heirloom tomatoes. You know, I always say to patients, listen, remember, tomatoes are going to irritate the bladder based upon the quantity of acid. So obviously, a cup of tomato sauce is a lot of tomatoes that have been reduced down. That's a lot of acid. But can you get away with a slice of tomato on a sandwich? You might be able to, because there's very little acid in a slice of tomato. And so doing those big yellow heirloom tomatoes and taking a slice off of that, putting it on a sandwich or putting it in an omelet or just sauteing it for pasta, you're good. That's probably not going to bother you. I'd be really surprised if it did. Sandy said, I've had a bad stomach virus for 10 days. It's going around. They said gastroenteritis. Are you hearing about this stomach virus flaring in my bladder? Yes, actually, I have, Sandy. I have been getting reports of, this has been a really weird, chaotic winter. And it's like the colds have been more intense. The flus have been more intense. The allergies have been more intense. And these stomach bugs that are going around are devastating. And it's kind of like norovirus on steroids. And again, this comes back to my point of, wait a second, if we decimate the Center for Disease Control and we decimate the National Institutes of Health, these are going to run rampant. I mean, it's going to be like life 100 years ago. And it's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So I'm really glad that you're getting the medical care you need. Now, what's interesting is we have long known that irritable bowel is common in the IC patient population, and now we know that that's a widespread pain phenotype. Okay, so we know that. What we never had a lot of research on was does patients with IC struggle with gastritis or gastroparesis or GERD or esophageal reflux? There had not been any study until we did our study that had explored the role of stomach problems in patients with IC. And our study was really quite shocking because the great majority of patients in that study, and I don't remember exactly what the percentages were reporting episodes of gastritis and episodes of GERD. And like, if I remember correctly, like 15% had also experienced gastroparesis, which is something that I have, which is delayed stomach emptying. It just means the nerves in your stomach are not working as well as they should. The food sits in your stomach for long periods of time, and then it starts to ferment, and then you get very gassy, and so there is that correlation with more stomach upset. Now, if I were to play devil's advocate, why would that be? Why would we be more prone to stomach issues? I'm going to go right back to the fact that we've all been massively over medicated with antibiotics. Every single one of us, every single one of you, when you first had your symptoms of IC, you assumed it was infection. Your doctor assumed it was infection, and they gave you antibiotics. And some of you have taken antibiotics for years, only to discover after the fact that you never had infection. I was just looking at a research study, an old research study, in the last 10 years, where I think they looked at, how many was it? Like, I don't know, like 100 patients who had been on antibiotics for a long period of time because they were all operating on the assumption that they had some sort of infection. And in fact, when they went back and looked at it, only 6 out of 100 actually had infection. The great majority of IC patients do not have infection, regardless of what the embedded infection people are saying online. So Sandy is getting bladder spasms from the IBS in the stomach. I'm not surprised, honey. I'm not surprised. And you've been really nauseous. Yikes, this has been going on for 10 days. And you took antibiotics before the stomach virus started. So, hopefully, hon, have they taken a stool sample and looked for C. diff? I mean, if this all began after you were taking antibiotics, then that, antibiotics destroys the entire biome. And then what happens then is, with the good bacteria destroyed, sometimes the bad bacteria grow and prosper and take over, and you end up with Clostridium difficile, C. diff. And C. diff is known for causing bloody diarrhea. So she says she has not been tested. Girl, you need to get tested for that tomorrow. I do not understand why they haven't tested you for that. Because if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. This happened after you took antibiotics. C. diff happens after you take antibiotics. You say you don't have C. diff. Did they do a fecal study? Did you give them a sample so that they could look at what was going on down there? Anna says, I have an appointment on Tuesday for physiotherapy. Any tips? What should I be expecting? Useful questions. I had some sessions 6-7 years ago, but no improvement whatsoever. My main symptoms are frequency and pain. I have IBS that got much worse after 3 years of antibiotics in the London clinic. Yeah. Yep, I'm not surprised. Okay, so going to a physical therapist and having that pelvic floor assessment is now considered the single most important diagnostic test. It should be at the very first appointment for your quote unquote IC, that doctor should do a vaginal or rectal exam and touch those muscles. If those muscles are tight, you are to be immediately referred to a physical therapist for a proper and comprehensive pelvic floor assessment. So that's what Anna's going to have on Tuesday. So Anna, go into that understanding that this is a separate set of eyes studying your pelvis and looking at your pelvis, okay? And so your job is to try to give them a roadmap. And the way you do that is by talking about your symptoms. So don't walk in and say you have IC. That's pointless. Walk in and say, here's my symptoms. When I sit down, I get a pain here. Or if you have pain with intimacy, or if you have pain with urination, after after you pee or before you pee. You've got to make a list of your symptoms, especially the weird random ones like, do you ever get sciatica? When you sit down, do you ever feel a vibration? Those are really, really important symptoms that they're going to want to know about. And I want you to take a good chunk of time and also think about past traumas. Have you ever fallen on your tailbone? Have you ever fallen off of a bike? Have you ever jammed your crotch on the bar of a bike? Have you ever been sexually abused or raped? And if you have, this is central to my identity as a young victim of how important it is that we find those young men and women or older men and women who were raped or abused, and they feel like it's their fault and they're suffering. And my job is to tell you that, no, you were a victim. I was a victim. And we want to work through that, and we want to repair any damage that might have been done. Were you an athlete? If you were, what was your sport? Were there any injuries in that sport? If you were a gymnast, if you were an ice skater, if you were a ballet dancers have terrible pelvic floors. If you were a runner, if you did sports in college, if you did sports in high school, were you in a car accident? Anything at all like that. Okay. So again, you're going to try to give them some tips on where to look. Now, when you go to that appointment, their job is to study your pelvis and to study your body. So they will generally have you walk up and down a hallway. Are you walking normally? They will generally have you, they will measure your legs. Do you have one leg longer than the other? That's important. They will then ask if they can do an internal examination. And that is the single most important part of that examination. So please don't say no. The only way you can reach these muscles is internally. You cannot reach them externally. Let me get my model here. Oops. Hold on a second. Let me take out the organs. There goes the uterus. There goes the bladder. There goes the levator ani. All right. And there's the bowel. Okay. So let us look at our pelvis again. So this is the front of the pelvis. So we've got our pubic bone. We've got our hip bones. Right? We're going to turn it around. Look at it from the back. So here we have our vertebrae right there from your spinal cord. We've got our sacrum, this triangular piece of bone that the pudendal nerve emerges out from. We've got the back of our hip bones right here. And if we look at it from underneath, these bones right here are your sit bones. These are the bones that are embedded. Well, they're not embedded. They're the main structures underneath your glute muscles that you sit on. And for me, for example, most of my pain is around my left sit bone. Okay. But look at the pelvic floor. Okay. Look at the pelvic floor here. You can see that these muscles are flat along the base of the bone, along the inside of the bone. And so the best way to reach these is through a hole, your rectum or your vagina. And so that physical therapist is going to ask if they can do an internal exam. You're not in stirrups. It's nothing like that. You're just laying on a table with your knees up slightly. They have a glove. They have some KY. They're going to put their finger where they need to put it. And all they're going to do is touch muscle groups. A healthy muscle feels like a raw chicken breast. It's soft, but it has substance. A cooked muscle, a, a hard muscle feels like a cooked chicken breast. And a very badly damaged muscle will feel like beef jerky. So literally, they'll know in 30 seconds, if not sooner, because the tight muscles are going to be very hard, ropey. They've been described as piano strings or guitar strings. A healthy muscle is soft and pliable. Okay, so you let them do the internal exam. Now, listen, if you were a victim of abuse and you don't want anybody touching you down there, you need to tell them that. They have worked with abuse patients before. And if it's an absolute no on your part, you are in control. You can say no. Your goal then is to build trust with that physical therapist. They understand that. They understand that your trust was broken and violated. And so they will start externally and they will work with you for several weeks, maybe even a couple of months, and prove to you that they are trustworthy and prove to you that as we get these muscles to relax and release, you start to feel better. Hopefully, you will then be able to let them do some internal massage. Now, there are some patients, I was working with a patient last week who literally her muscles were so tight, her muscles were like this, you could not get a finger in her vagina. Hard as a rock. Just, man, the doctor tried, couldn't get a speculum in there, couldn't get anything in there. Her muscles were locked down very, very tight. And that's called vaginismus. And in my experience with vaginismus patients is it usually goes back to either a very, very traumatic accident in childhood, like a really bad bike accident. I was working with one patient who was jumping over a fire hydrant, and that hard knob at the top of the fire hydrant, she landed on that and had a devastating injury. She was bleeding profusely. It was a terrible injury. And she had extremely tight muscles because of that injury. And of course, the other time that we're received very, very tight muscles are in children who have been abused, sexually abused, and again, it's heartbreaking when you're the victim and you don't understand why you're having issues 20, 30, 40 years later. And you come to find out, why has sex always been painful? Oh, because your muscles are locked down hard as a rock because, unfortunately, you suffered some abuse. The blessing here is physical therapy works. When I was getting my pre-med pharmacology degree, I did surgery for a year. I have a really rare degree. So yes, I did surgery. Okay, and I'm very happy to say, was quite good at it. One of the things that shocked me was muscles and how responsive muscles are. I could make like an inch-long incision in a muscle, and I could just gently stretch it like this, and I could get that incision to naturally stretch to like 3 inches wide. That's how amazing muscles are. And then when you're done and you suture it closed, the muscles will go back down to their proper length. So muscles respond beautifully to hands-on work. Another barrier that we have with physical therapy is that for some men or women who have that examination, it might hurt. And they're like, oh, hell no, you're not touching me again. I'm not doing that. That put me into a flare. And I think it's very important that you understand that at that first appointment, when they are doing this diagnostic assessment, listen, if they can touch a muscle and trigger pain, that's fantastic. I call that your hallelujah moment because they found it. And your question is then, that's it. What are you touching? That's what hurts. In my case, it was a piriformis muscle deep in my pelvis. I had a fairly substantial trigger point. And so when they find it, yeah, believe me, it's not the funnest thing in the world to go through, but hey, now they've localized it and now they're going to work on it and try to get that little muscle knot to release and to relax and relieve. Physical therapy of getting back to IC research, over $100 million put into IC research for the National Institutes of Health. Only one study was found to be significantly successful. And that was the pelvic floor physical therapy study. All the other studies, all the bladder treatment studies were really no better than placebo. Physical therapy helped 70 to 80% of the patients who did it. Now, why is there that fact? Because you can't put apples, oranges, and bananas in the same study and expect success. Remember, we have phenotypes now. We have groups now. So what that study showed us is that a bladder treatment is probably not going to help the vast majority of patients, because the vast majority of IC patients, 80 to 85% of us, are muscle patients. That IC is really no longer considered an incurable bladder disease by the American Urology Association. In the IC world in general, it is considered a neuromuscular disorder. And remember, we're not going to be using the name interstitial cystitis much longer. It's not being used around the world, which means I'm going to have to change the name of the IC network. I think it's going to be, I'm going towards the IC and pelvic pain network. I don't know, something like that. So getting back to the importance of this, bladder therapies will never treat muscle issues. And that is why in our guidelines, it says muscles should be assessed at the very first appointment. And if they find tight muscles, you are to be immediately referred to physical therapy. Because of all the research ever done, the one study that was the most successful was the pelvic floor physical therapy study. Now, of course, we have new things that are going on too, but no bladder treatment is going to fix a tight muscle. We have to work on those muscles separately. So I'm really glad you're going to do that, honey. Cindy said, how does IC belly fit into IBS treatment, or can it? I can't get any of my doctors to seriously address it. No pain, just swelling. You know, the IC belly has been one of the annoyances from day one. It's like you can wake up with a flat stomach and 3 hours later look 8 months pregnant. Like, where the hell did this come from? That's so weird. I remember that. I mean, I was very, very thin when I was first diagnosed, because I was a mega athlete. And all of a sudden I would have this belly appear and then it would go away. I also asked a lot of IC researchers about it, and really only one had a theory, and that was Dr. Theoharides. Dr. Theoharides, who did his research initially at Tufts University. He believes that it's an inflammatory process. And I was just talking to him or emailing him like literally 10 days ago saying we need to do an update on the IC belly, because that's something everybody's confused about, is why does this belly occur? I just know for me, my belly is really driven by carbs now and inflammation now. Like, I have a stomach I didn't have before my surgery. And I was with one of my best friends yesterday who also had breast cancer. And man, she is as lean as a whip, except she's got this little, she and I have exactly the same belly. This little belly sticking out. And it's like, I don't want this belly. And her theory is that it's inflammation from the whole breast cancer thing. JD Payne says, what is the best way to replenish your system after several courses of antibiotics? Well, obviously probiotics. The fresher, the better. And so I would be doing yogurt or kefir every day. I would mix it up. I would change brands. I don't like the idea of taking the same probiotic over and over and over, because literally you're just populating your colon with a limited number. I think it's really important to have a lot of diversity in there. So for me, when I take antibiotics, I really switch it up. I'll do one for like 2 weeks, and then I'll do another for 2 weeks, and then I'm trying always to get my beneficial probiotics in with yogurt. So right now I'm doing, in fact, I had a protein smoothie this morning with a no fat, high protein, unflavored yogurt in my fruit smoothie. It's all about just trying to maintain a biome. And it's amazing what you learn with time and with age. Lori, hold that question. I'll get that into a moment. When I think about what I would, so like I was born, okay, I'm an old lady. Okay. I was born in 1960. I'm 64. So I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and our diets were terrible. We're talking Wonder Bread, Kraft macaroni and cheese, quick and easy meals. My mom was a teacher. She worked full time. My dad worked for Calvet. And they didn't have time to make, I mean, they didn't have time to cook. So my sister and I cooked. So we always tried to cook a fresh meal even back then. But still, a lot of Snickers bars and Slurpees. And I remember heating up Dr. Pepper with lemon and making a hot drink with it, and drinking a lot of Diet Coke. And now we really understand that high sugar, high fat diet is devastating. So I just think cleaning up your diet's really important. Getting rid of the sugar. I mean, I did not know that cancer cells feed on sugar, because I'd never dealt with cancer before. And now, and like the rule number 1 is stop using granulated sugar. And I might use it once a week. I might do a teaspoon in a cup of tea. I don't eat candy anymore. I'm just, the industrialized food manufacturing has really hurt us badly. Cindy said, I wanted to let you know that I'm feeling so much better after taking lactoferrin and bladder builder. Yeah, baby. UTI symptoms are all but gone. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, Cindy, great news. Love it, love it, love it. Keep getting more and more reports of patient calling saying they're doing really well with lactoferrin. Of course, our lactoferrin study came out last summer that showed that lactoferrin made red inflamed bladders pink and healthy, and Hunner's lesions virtually disappeared, and systemic inflammation dramatically decreased. And so it's so great now for us to have something which can fight off some of that inflammation that we're all struggling with. Hello, Sue. Nice to see you, honey. Shana says, I think my doctor will be getting you a new physical therapist. Is it normal to not have pain with IC? Absolutely. Not every IC patient has pain. Some patients just have frequency urgency. There are only 2 nerves in your bladder. There's the alpha afferent nerve, which controls frequency urgency. That is a nerve that it's very easy to turn on. And the reason why is because that's the nerve that tells you when you need to pee. The other nerve is a C fiber. That's a pain nerve. That's a hard nerve to turn on. So the very first symptom that patients are going to experience when their bladders start to get irritated, it's just peeing all the time, frequency urgency. And then if you go past that point of no return, where let's say you're drinking Diet Coke every day, or using ketamine, or going through chemotherapy, or you have a viral infection, at some point in time that pain nerve gets turned on. But if you're just having frequency urgency, that's great. Now we got to figure out why you have the frequency urgency and calm that nerve back down. If you're looking for a physical therapist, there's a great website, pelvicrehab.com. That's short for rehabilitation. So pelvicrehab.com is a great place to find properly trained physical therapists. Donna said, my pelvic floor physical therapist uses her model all the time to educate after performing internal. It's so educational. I've got a physical therapist that we're gonna do a Zoom with, and I'm hoping that she will demonstrate more. I can only demonstrate based upon my personal experience. Denise said, I have physical therapy. It helped a lot. I continue to do it at home. I still sometimes get achy across my lower belly, like hip to hip, but it passes. It's weird though. Yeah, Denise, it's funny because, so like last week, I was doing a ton of writing because I'm working on our new flare guide. And I was sitting here at this desk 6 to 7 hours a day. And I did that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then Thursday, I started to feel the burn. And my burning was obviously from very tight pelvic floor muscles, but I feel it like as a burning sensation at the entrance to my vagina and in my vagina. And it just gets really, really uncomfortable to sit down. And so then I stand up and I caught myself, I was just like, okay, you're sitting a lot, Jill. So like the first thing I did is because this is a sit stand desk, I just raised it up and I stood here for a while, but the burning persisted until I used my wand. I have a wand. And let's see. Okay, so this is the very wand. This is a sample of the wand I use. This is not the wand I use. That is in my bedroom. Okay. So this is a wand that you use internally, and you can see how great it is for reaching deep into the pelvis, right? It's just super, super easy to use a wand. And so what I do is I lay on my bed and I put my feet up on the wall, which I did like on Thursday. And oh my God, my muscles were so sore. I was like, okay, this is why you're hurting, Jill. And I tend to get a lot of rectal pain, the muscles around my rectum. And then they start getting involved. And look, I accidentally broke it again. So these are the levator muscles. And there's that other piece that's broken off. So just pretend it's there. I've got to glue it back on. But if you look at the levator muscles, you can see that they wrap around the urethra, they wrap around the vagina, but they really wrap around the rectum. And so I will start getting a lot of pain, not on my rectum, but near my rectum. And so, man, all I had to do was use my wand once, but I was very thorough. I mean, I did it for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then I kind of went, okay, yes, you have just worked very tender muscles. And I kind of walked around a little slowly for an hour, but it went away. Marlia said, okay, here, hold on. Lori says, can you take PEA and bladder builder at the same time? Yes, you can, but bladder builder already has PEA in it. That's why bladder builder is, in my opinion, the best bladder supplement on the market, because it has the pain fighting effect of the PEA. So, but you can boost that by taking another PEA with your bladder builder, no problem. They specifically, the company that makes it expected that to happen, so they moderated the dosage. And so, yeah, a little bit of PEA on top of the bladder builder should be fine. Marlia said, I just recently had E. coli UTI and you took cephalexin. Yogurt makes my belly burn. I must assume kefir will too. So is it because of the fermentation process? What else can I do to get probiotics? I'm afraid of pre-leaf as I had passed 2 kidney stones 2 years ago. Well, pre-leaf is not a probiotic, so that's not even part of this discussion. Some patients flare with probiotics, and it's a mast cell reaction. There's a mast cell reaction going on there. So, or you might be having an issue with the base. Maybe you're having an issue with the milk base. So you could try, like, I don't like milk. I generally did not like dairy-based yogurts. I preferred coconut milk yogurt. And so you could maybe try a coconut milk yogurt and see if that makes a difference. You could. It's an idea. Denise said, the skin feels lumpy under the lower part of the pelvic area. I use the wand. Interesting. You know, I noticed, this is going to sound really weird, but like I had a pretty severe pelvic floor flare like a month ago for a couple of days, like 4 days in a row. And it ends up feeling like a yeast infection. I mean, it's just like these tight muscles are very vaginal to me, and the entrance to the vagina. And, you know, when I was touching my skin, number one, my skin was very dry because I had not been using my estrogen as regularly as I should have, because I just forgot. And so I had a 2-pronged approach, because I knew it was my muscles because I couldn't pee easily. You know, that's how you can really tell the health of your muscles, by can you pee like a horse, or do you hesitate 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds before you can relax enough release urine? Okay, I was hesitating like a beast, and I had that burning sensation that you get when muscles are really tight. So anyway, I did feel my skin down there, like right at the entrance of my vagina, like an inch in, it almost felt crunchy. It was very bumpy. It wasn't smooth. And so I doubled down on my estrogen and used it every day for a week. And I did my internal massage, and, you know, 5 days later, it was gone. But it's funny because in hindsight, when I think about all the flares that I had, all the times when I was a teenager that I thought I was having yeast infections over and over and over, right? And they never found yeast, but they gave me yeast meds anyway. And I realize now all of those were muscle flares. It's so weird. Cindy said, Jill, you give us such hope here. We are looking great. And you're looking, well, you know, hey man, the white hair's coming in. I'm going blonde again, my friends. Thankfully, it looks blonde instead of gray. Redhead, see, this is the ultimate revenge of a redhead, is we don't go gray. And so for all those kids who teased us when we were younger, and a lot of my friends, they've got gray hair now. I don't, my friend. And when I get older, I just go blonder and blonder and blonder, and it will always look a little blonde. And I'm like, just a little bit of childish revenge for all the carrot top jokes that I had growing up. Anna says, I fell from a bunk bed when I was 10, but I also had many UTIs throughout my life. The embedded infection seemed to make sense. After 3 years, I quit. I know people that have been on the London protocol for over 8 years. Yeah, you know, Anna, I mean, here's the thing. So my symptoms started at 14 when I fell and broke my tailbone. Yours started at 10 when you fell off your bunk bed. And you did antibiotics for 3 years. They did nothing. I mean, you might have felt a little bit better because antibiotics are anti-inflammatories, but antibiotics will never treat tight muscles. This is why we phenotype now. Lori said, do you put the estrogen cream inside or rub it on the outside? Both. I have always been more prone to using it externally than internally because I am not in a relationship right now having sex with people. And so I have not been as worried internally as I have been externally, although I would love to be in a relationship and having sex again. Lori said, life is weird. Marlia says, I know pre-leaf is an antacid, but I thought I read pre-leaf could contribute to kidney stones. It could. If pre-leaf is calcium glycerophosphate, it is a calcium pill like Tums, but it's a different type of calcium. It's calcium glycerophosphate. If you eat pre-leaf like candy, and there's some patients who have done this, they just like eat 6, 8, 10 a day. Calcium's got to go somewhere. And there is always a chance that you eat so much of it that you're going to push a calcium stone. Pre-leaf is only meant to be used before a meal. And then only before a meal that you find might be really acidic, like what we were talking about when we first started this meeting, that is a tomato-based pasta. But pre-leaf is the oldest and most trusted supplement out there. It's been out there for 40 years. They sponsor this meeting. They have sponsored IC stuff ever since I've been involved. Fantastic company to work with, and they truly care. And hold on. Okay, so here's pre-leaf, right? So you always want to have some pre-leaf on hand because you can alkalinize your urine if you have a bladder wall flare with it. It will help you eat meals. Pre-leaf, long known, beloved supplement in the IC world, the most well-known supplement. They have released something new. It's called P-leaf. It's a companion for pre-leaf. I wanted to call it Pre-leaf Plus, but they decided to do it a little bit differently because it was we were talking, and this is one of the reasons why this happened. So you know what P-leaf is? P-leaf is palmitoyl-ethanolamide. You know what that does? Is that calms nerves down. And so it's fantastic that we have this company with widespread reach throughout the world, especially here in the United States with stores everywhere, who are now going to be promoting a product that has been proven in research to reduce bladder, prostate, and pelvic pain. So this is super, super exciting, and it's available on Amazon right now. We're not going to have this in our store. They're doing it on Amazon. So in our shop, we have Piora, they're very similar. They're slightly different, but they're very, very similar. But again, props to Pre-leaf for bringing in P-leaf. Super, super exciting. Here, let me move that wand. The reason why I love this wand is because it's made of Pyrex, and it's so easy to clean. It's very easy to tell when it's dirty, and it's really easy to tell when it's clean because it's very slippery. I mean, it's just, if it's been used, you can see because it gets cloudy. Super, super easy to clean with hot soap and water. You can get this right now on the Desert Harvest website. DesertHarvest.com bought the company that makes this, and it's called Easy Relief, I think. You can get it on Amazon also. Veronica says, could anxiety and stress be the cause of pelvic tightness episodes and pelvic pain reflected in the bladder? I started physical therapy and felt the difference in the first massage session. Yeah, absolutely, honey, because when you're anxious and when you're in fight or flight, the very first muscle group you tighten is your pelvic floor, because that's the muscle group that prepares you to run or flee. So intense levels of stress over time will certainly contribute to tight pelvic floor muscles. And I think that that's something we all have to be attentive to right now, because this is a very scary time right now, especially financially. I mean, my retirement, I think I lost 40% of the value of my retirement in 2 days. That's scary as hell. The threat of possibly losing retirement money, scary. And so we all, and the people that I'm talking with, everybody's worried deeply about our future right now. And so we all have to work very hard to keep our stress level low, to try to keep ourselves relaxed. They're going to do whatever the hell they're going to do back east. What we can do right now is focus on what can bring us comfort right now. We need to make our homes little bubbles of peace, I hope. Denise, the skin feels lumpy under the lower part of the pelvic area. You use the wand. Maybe the lumps are scar tissue under the skin and the lower belly above the pubic bone. I think that'd be a really good question to ask a physical therapist and see what they have to say. That's interesting. You're welcome, JD. You're welcome. Hi, Debbie. Veronica says, my urologist changed my diagnosis from IC to pelvic floor dysfunction. I'm still following the diet until I have a couple of therapies done. Good. Good. That's excellent. You know, the reason why pelvic floor patients end up with some food sensitivities and a sensitive bladder is because long-term muscle tension cuts blood supply to the bladder. This is called ischemia. And the challenge with ischemia is that, let's say your bladder is supposed to get 24 units of blood a day, but it's only getting 10. Are you going to have a healthy bladder? No, of course not, because the bladder tissue is being deprived of oxygen and nutrition. And so, of course, the bladder wall is going to struggle. And of course, things are going to become more inflamed and sensitive without good blood supply. But the difference is that once you restore blood supply with good physical therapy, the bladder then gets sufficient blood supply and it should heal. Hopefully that food sensitivity will go away. My food sensitivity has gone away. I can eat anything. Now, honestly, I was scared to eat. I mean, I've shared this story before. I hadn't had lemonade. I stopped lemonade in 1993. 18 months ago, 19 months ago. No, it's more than that now. Oh my God, it's 21 months ago. Yikes. When my parents died, we all got exposed to COVID at the hospital. And I was coughing so violently in my hospital, in my mom's hospital room. I just walked in to see her. It's the last time I saw her alive. And within a minute or two, we didn't know we had COVID. I was coughing so violently, I was retching. And I ran into her little bathroom and shut the door. I started heaving. I mean, the coughing was terrible. And I literally had to run out of the hospital. And I had a mask on, but it was terrible. And again, she was dying and I couldn't sit with her, which is a whole nother story. So anyway, I'm driving home coughing like a beast going, oh my God, how am I going to stop this? And what went through my brain was hot lemonade with honey. And I thought, I don't care what that's going to do my bladder. I stopped at the grocery store, ran in, got some lemonade, got some honey. I've been drinking lemonade every day since. I didn't flare at all. I have yet to flare from lemonade. Like I'm not flaring from tomato sauce. I'm pelvic floor driven. Once we got my muscles healthier and my blood supply was restored, my bladder healed. And the food sensitivities went away. So Veronica, just go slow. You got to go slow and introduce food slowly. I mean, like literally, I didn't drink any citrus for 30 years or 28 years, whatever. And if I was just too afraid to try. But I consider myself living proof that pelvic floor physical therapy can be life-changing. Lori says, does PEA work immediately? Well, we actually have the first studies with PEA were done in Italy, and it was a 4 to 6 months, and PEA patients with PEA reported a progressive and increasing reduction in their pain over time, which is very, very exciting. That was in 2019, and the IC doctors who saw that got very, very excited because they could now suggest something for pain that was not addictive at all. Super cool. However, what's even more interesting is literally we just had a brand new study released with menstrual cramps, PEA and menstrual cramps, and they found that PEA did reduce pain within an hour or two, about 25%. So most of the patients in that study reported an immediate, but it's not like codeine. You know, codeine will turn pain off completely for 4 hours. With the PEA, very gradual, but that study did show that PEA reduced pain in the short term. So they were kind of positioning it. They thought maybe with some refinement that it would it could kind of act like Advil or Tylenol. I was working in my yard yesterday, and I was pulling weeds, and it pulls on my incisions. I can stay here. It's like I'm usually good for like 3 hours, and then there's something about sitting here that makes all my incisions pull. So sorry about that, but you know, the only way to calm it down is for me to just rub the incisions a little bit, and then it gets better. Double mastectomy, for those who don't know. Double mastectomy last July. Marlia says, so will a vibrating wand restore blood supply without inserting it? I'm not quite there with the penetration part yet, but I would like to get the Pyrex wand to use at some point. I'm trying to get the nerve up. Wait a second. I'm trying to get the nerve up to go to, I get it. You're trying to get the nerve to go to physical therapy. Medicare insurance probably won't cover it. Marlia, the problem with that approach is you're just doing a free willy, for lack of a better term. You're just kind of going for it. But you don't know, but you really don't have enough information to do it correctly. You need a physical therapist to help you understand which muscle groups are the problem. Is it on the left side? Is it on the right side? Is it shallow? Is it deep? And so we always say, and especially if money is a problem and it's not covered, you know, if you can just go once and have a proper pelvic floor assessment, walking out with the name of the muscle that's the problem. So let's say it's your levator ani. When you have the name, now you can go to YouTube and you can search for levator ani rehabilitation, and you can start doing some of those exercises. And then again, at that first appointment, hopefully the physical therapist will give you some exercises you can do at home, and you just be really honest and say, listen, money's real tight for me. I can't afford to do this. So what I'm going to propose that I do is, if you can give me some exercises, I want to do that for like 4 months. And then I want to come back for a check-in. And I want you to look at my muscles again and see if I'm making progress. I mean, that's a reasonable approach. More and more insurance companies are coming to accept that physical therapy is helpful. Unless you have United Healthcare. By the way, anybody else get, like, I don't use butter right now because I can't, because I had my gallbladder removed. And so I put jam on my toast in the morning. I do the Bon Marie, or Bonnie Bane Maman. Man, their glass jars are great for water glasses. I probably have a dozen of these now. Making do. We're just making do with what we've got. Marlia said that sounds like a very good plan. Good. Also, Marlia, listen, the other thing I would recommend, if you're going to try to do the home approach, there are 2 books I would recommend. I would recommend this book just to help you understand what you're touching when you're using your wand, help you understand structures and locations. And so look at this. It literally opened up to when you sit on a bicycle seat, you can see the bicycle seat presses right up against nerves right there. The perineal branch right there, you know. Anyway, it's important that you not try to do this with some education. So let me see. I love the muscle pictures in here. They're so incredibly good. And then they talk about, you know, he talks about a trigger point. So like here's a trigger point in a muscle knot. And he says, listen, as long as that muscle has a trigger point, it will never be healthy, because you can see what happens that when you have a muscle literally pushing up against a blood vessel and cannot do what it needs to do, or it's messing with a nerve. Actually, that's a nerve. No, that's a blood vessel. It's a compressed capillary. Something else is very interesting. Here's a nerve. This is a peripheral nerve. And, you know, you tend to think that a nerve is like a single string of a nerve. And actually in that nerve bundle are a bunch of small nerves. We've got motor nerves, we've got sensory nerves. But what's even more important is all of those nerves have their own blood supply. Little tiny blood vessels that allow these nerves to behave like a nerve, because nerves need blood supply to function properly. It's all about calcium. You know, the nerve action potential releases calcium and I think something else into the bloodstream, and then it pulls it back out. Anyway, it has to have healthy blood supply to be normal. Don't quote me on the calcium. It might be something else, but I think it's calcium. And look at this picture. This is so important. Look at this picture. So remember the sacrum, the triangular, where you can see it right here, right there. This is that triangular bone at the base of your spine. And then there are nerves. You can see the little white nerves that are coming out of the holes of the sacrum. And when you look up close, here they are right here. And you can see that they're going over and under the piriformis muscle. So what happens when this muscle gets tight? Hello, pudendal neuralgia. When you start squeezing that nerve, that patient is going to feel pins and needles, areas of numbness. You might have, if you have a history of sciatica, that is absolute proof that you have had or continue to have tight pelvic floor muscle. So a muscle gets so tight that you're, as an example, if you have a foot that goes numb, I worked with 2 patients recently who, whenever they flared, their feet went numb. And I mean, and I've said this before, working with IC patients, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. It takes, because I'll usually talk to patients for 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes even 2 hours. And finally, I start getting good information. And I was working with one gentleman who literally, his foot goes completely numb during flares. And he just didn't get it. He did not get it at all. It's like, why did that happen? I went, that's tight pelvic floor muscles, my friend. That means you're having a pelvic floor flare. And that pelvic floor flare, that spasm is so extreme, it's basically closing the nerve. And then I worked with another patient who had affected both feet. It's fascinating. And that's often the tibial nerve, or it can be the sciatic nerve, but it's usually that foot numbing thing usually means that the pelvic floor is squeezing the tibial nerve, I think. Diane said, I had steroid injections in my bladder and it helped with the pain, frequency, urgency. Now my urogyne said I have Hunner's lesions and I can have injections again in 6 months, but I want him to test for EBV or the polyoma virus to treat that. I've been taking 300 milligrams of lactoferrin daily, but wonder if I should stop because they might throw off the test for EBV by saying I don't have it. Well, you're kind of talking in a circle there, Diane. I mean, okay, so lactoferrin is going to suppress bacterial, viral, or fungal infections over time because that's what it does. God, I don't even really know how. I don't even know how to answer your question. I guess I would look at it this way. If lactoferrin is improving your symptoms dramatically over time, then that's almost an affirmation that you could have a viral infection. But it's a blood test. I just don't know if it would really throw off the test for EBV because that's looking for, I mean, it's looking for, what's the word? I forget the word. There's a word, if you've been exposed to a disease, you have this in your bloodstream. Oh, come on, what is it? It'll come to me. I don't think it would throw it off. Veronica says, hope you get better soon. If that was to me, thank you. I'm much better than I was. It's just a long, painful recovery, let me tell you. Nancy said, thank you. I was feeling good until I fell off a curb at the airport a week ago. Yeah, that'll do it, honey. That'll do it. I had a guy fall off of a curb yesterday, as a matter of fact, and thankfully he didn't. I mean, I was right next to him, and thankfully he didn't hit his head. But anytime you fall, stumble, trauma, I mean, all of those stresses, mechanical stresses that happen when you trip and stumble and fall will be directed back up into your pelvis. And if you happen to fall on your tailbone, you happen to fall on a hip, ow. Then we've got direct muscle trauma. We've got muscle compression. We've got nerve compression. We've got blood vessel compression. We've got bruising, which proves the blood vessels have been injured. I've only fallen twice recently. My parents, when they were quite elderly, my mother fell a lot. And she just bounced off the floor. And she never broke a thing because she'd taken calcium every day for 50 years. And the doctor just said, you got bones like metal bars. I mean, it was amazing, the fall she took. Scared the living daylights out of me whenever she fell, because she would have her hands on her walker, and then she would let it go and reach over to pick something up and just boom. I wanted to talk a little bit about allergies, and I will probably next week kick off the meeting with allergies, but let us do this since I'm here. That is so weird. Where did all these ads come from? What? There's all these GoDaddy ads on my website? Where'd that come from? I didn't put GoDaddy ads on the IC Network website. Maybe my browser is doing it. Okay, that was so weird. Okay, anyway, we happen to have a really good blog on our, we got a couple of really good articles about allergies, hay fever, and IC. And again, it has been a wicked year of allergies by far. And so I wanted to go over a couple of allergy tips. So, while you may think your seasonal allergies are affecting only your sinuses, they can affect your bladder and your bowel. IC patients are more likely to have asthma and seasonal allergies than the general population. IC patients with allergies also are much more likely to have bladder flares when pollen counts begin to rise, and allergy meds seem to curb flares in allergy symptoms in the bladder for some patients. So what are our strategies? We got to reduce the exposure. Pollens from grasses, trees, and flowers fluctuate throughout the year. Odds are you already know which time of year is the worst for you right now. But if not, it's very helpful to use an online pollen map. They will notify you when pollens are rising and also give you a bullseye view of what's happening throughout the country. But it's not just pollen that you have to monitor. High winds make allergies much worse because they spread pollens far and wide. So on windy days, limit your time outside as much as you can and keep your windows closed. Avoid outdoor activity in the morning when pollen counts are the highest. If possible, have someone else mow the lawn or pull weeds when allergies are intense. If you must be outside, wear a pollen mask. Even a simple cloth face mask might help a bit. Wear a hat to keep pollen out of your hair and sunglasses to keep the pollen out of your eyes. Remove your clothes before you walk into your house. Wash immediately in warm or hot water and be sure to dry them in the clothes dryer. Don't dry clothes outside because pollens will stick to them. Leave your shoes outside and avoid tracking dirt and pollens in the house. Wash your hair before going to bed to get rid of the pollen in your hair. Wash your bedding in soapy water weekly. All right. So anyway, what can we do? We can do the over-the-counter meds like Zyrtec, Claritin, Alivert. Unfortunately, I can't take any of those because they all mess my heart up. But you definitely want to be very careful of allergy meds that contain decongestants like pseudoephedrine. Those are well known for triggering IC flares. Nose sprays are available, like a nasal corticosteroid. I use Nasacort to reduce swelling in my nose. I used it this morning, and of course, doing saline sprays like the Ocean Spray can help clear out your sinuses in a real natural way. That's over the counter. Thankfully, one of the classic oral medications often suggested to IC patients is the antihistamine hydroxyzine, known as Atarax or Visceral. These were in our guidelines for many, many years. And so hydroxyzine works by reducing some of that mast cell irritation in the bladder, and it happens to help quite a bit with allergies. So doing Atarax or Visceral, you get a double whammy. It might help your allergies and help your bladder. And for patients who struggle with asthma, Montelukast or Singulair is recommended for IC patients. Let's see, of course, you want to maintain your water intake. That's really important because your bladder is going to be a little bit more vulnerable. Try to keep your house clean. Get rid of the dust and mold whenever you can. I was cleaning this morning. And know when to see an allergist. If your allergies are feeling out of control or they're more intense than normal, it would be reasonable to go see an allergist and maybe have Maybe the dreaded skin prick test. The allergy skin prick test is where they'll do it on your forearm and they put little pricks of different allergens on it. And then you wait like 24 hours and see which ones blow up. And then you know which ones you're irritated to. I found that test very stressful because my skin was so uncomfortable and I just wanted to put steroid on it just to calm it down. It was like having a bunch of mosquito bites. So anyway, if you're flaring during allergy season, you're not alone. It is very, very common. Lori says, I didn't know Sudafed is an IC trigger. Oh yeah, it can be for sure. For sure. All right, we have been going for almost 2 hours now. I am here as long as you have questions. And so give me questions, my friends. Give me questions. If we're done, we're done. That's fine. I'm going to be painting today, but I just need to sit at my kitchen table and put on a movie and paint. I just finished one. I'll go get it and show it to you. All right. So this is the painting I just finished. What do you think? I like it. Okay, so you guys, this is not my design. Hold on. This is I'm doing these really hard paint by numbers. I can paint on my own too, but this is how I'm coping with stress right now. I mean, I just need to turn off my brain and just look at something and intricate so that I'm not thinking about whatever's bothering me right now. So anyway, that's my latest one. It's kind of crooked. I have to redo that again. And then the one I'm doing next is that one. Can you see her? Wait, okay, I've got to move it for Facebook. You guys can't see that. Thank you. I like big pops of color. Colors make me happy. And I had dinner with a couple of friends last night and we were all lamenting the fact that we're all older and it's just like, how did this happen? Thought we were supposed to say 25 forever. Gosh darn it. And my answer to them is it was just thinking about what do I want to do for the next, I'm 64. People in my family generally live until their 90s, knock on wood, but I'm the only one who's had cancer, so we'll see. So I asked myself, what do I want to accomplish in the next 20 years? And I want to continue my IC work. I want to make things. I want to create things. I'm very worried that I'm going to be forgotten when I'm gone because I don't have children. And there's a part of me that just really worries that when I'm gone, I'll be gone and nobody will remember me. And so I want to make things so that people will remember me. Is that weird? Might be a little weird. Lori says, would I recommend Botox injections? Well, you can have Botox injections in your pelvic floor for very, very tight pelvic floor muscles. Or you can have Botox in your bladder wall, and they do different things. So Botox in your pelvic floor act to release tight muscles, whereas Botox in your bladder wall acts to silence nerves that might be overactive and giving you symptoms of frequency urgency. Botox in the pelvic floor is not associated, at least that I'm aware of, with significant risk. Botox in the bladder wall is associated with pretty significant risk because if they accidentally silence the nerve that helps you urinate, you will not be able to pee for weeks or months and you will have to self-catheterize. And worst case scenario with Botox is I had one patient who had Botox and they injected it into her bloodstream and it stopped her heart. And she was in the ICU for a considerable period of time. And that was just bad luck, poor technique. Here, hold on, my pants are being weird. I got to be comfortable here. What's going on with my pants? All right. Allison said, in addition to physical therapy, is there a supplement you recommend that increases blood flow to the bladder? Not that I know of. PEA is going to calm nerves down. And so anybody who's got tight pelvic floor muscles and we're dealing with nerves that are sensitive, I always recommend Peora, Peaora, or now P-Leaf. Those would be the two that I would recommend. Veronica says, you won't be forgotten. You've helped many people with your work. Thank you, guys. It's so weird not having children. You know, that who will care, you know? I mean, I just feel this isn't what I intended. You know, the first love of my life, Earl had cancer, and the second love of my life had MS. And I met him in college. And he was dying. They both died. It just wasn't. It wasn't meant to be. I will tell you, if you want to hear a funny joke, I will tell you a funny joke. Okay. The last date I had was hysterical. So I was at the grocery store and there's this very handsome man who, by standing at the pharmacy, holding the gallon jug of colonoscopy prep. And he looked terrible. He looked so kerfuffled, for lack of a better term. And so I was walking by and I just leaned over and I went, you're going to be fine. I had it a couple of years ago. Don't worry about it. And he kind of looked at me as like a lifeline. He was like, really? And I'm like, yes, don't sweat it. Not a big deal. And so, you know, we talked just a little bit and I was just kind of giving him some insight on what to do. And he goes, you're really wonderful. Would you like to go out to dinner? And I went, sure, sure. So we met. Really nice guy. We met at a restaurant. And so I get there and he's got flowers for me. I mean, this is several years ago. And before COVID and before I was caring for my parents so much. So we get there and he's quite nice. And I'm like going, yeah, it feels good. And then he whipped out a big pile of pictures. And he's like, I have to show you what I do. And I'm like, okay. Whip out a picture, pile of dead animals. Picks up a next picture, pile of dead animals. Picture after picture of dead gophers and moles. Bloody, nasty. And I'm looking at this, we're waiting for dinner, and he just finally looked at me and he goes, this isn't working for you. It's I was like, no, this is not working for me at all. And by then we had dinner and I just said, "Thank you so much. I truly wish you well." And I stood up to go, and he said, "Okay, but would you at least come back to my apartment and have sex with me?" At which point I'm like, "No, thank you," and I scurried my way out. It turned out he was an incredibly famous guy in wineries, known for getting rid of gophers in vineyards. True story. Okay. JD Payne, question about AZO-UTI test strips. Is it possible to test positive for leukocytes and negative for nitrites and still not have a UTI just flare? Absolutely. It's completely normal. And so it's the nitrates that are produced only by infection. So if you have a double positive nitrate leukocyte, yeah, you probably have infection. But if you're negative for the nitrates and you're positive for the leukocytes, that's probably just a bladder wall flare. It's probably your bladder wall has been very, very irritated, and your body has sent leukocytes there, and the blood vessels open and release a little bit of leukocytes and a little bit of red blood cells. Very common. Diane said, "I'm kind of confused because my last urologist said I didn't have true Hunner's lesions, but severe inflammation, and he did cauterize areas in my bladder during a hydrodistension. The new urogyn said that I have Hunner's lesions and that the areas cauterized broke open, and that's where he injected the steroids. I'm wondering a lot. I wonder if I do have Hunner's lesions or not, and wonder about having a third option." Well, you know, I think that you should trust your urogynecologist if they, and I can show you pictures. Here, hold on. So basically what he's saying, here, hold on. Okay. So here are pictures of inflamed versus not inflamed Hunner's lesion. So an inflamed Hunner's lesion, you can see very red, bloody, I mean, you can tell these are bladders that are on fire. These patients are suffering. And then the pictures down below where it's areas of whiteness, these are non-inflamed lesions or perhaps lesions that have been fulgurated or lasered. So what he's saying is that you had something like this, but it broke open again. So he or she. And the fact that you're feeling better after he injected a steroid in there, remember steroids reduce inflammation, I think kind of confirms that your bladder wall is very, very inflamed. And so I whether it's Hunner's lesions or not, your bladder apparently is fragile and kind of broke open again. And so I would think, so why would that happen? Because, scar tissue, well, number one, it can be scar tissue. Number two, whiteness sometimes mean that there's no blood flow to the area, kind of like lichen sclerosis on the vulva. So why would it have broken? Well, we now have this new research that's connected viral infections to Hunner's lesions. So is there a chance that you had a viral infection turn on in your bladder again? So doing lactoferrin to me would be a no-brainer. Because again, we've got research showing that red inflamed bladders became pink and healthy, and Hunner's lesions virtually disappeared, almost completely disappeared. So I would be very tempted to be adding lactoferrin to your daily routine if you're not doing that yet. Anne says, does that info with leukocytes and nitrates coming in a culture? No, it's a dipstick, hun. Let me show you. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so azo test strips. It comes with something that you pee on. Okay, you guys can't see the color. Well, there, if I tilt it to the side, you can see the color, right? So it's got two separate pads. So the top one is nitrates, and the bottom one is leukocytes. I always forget if it's nitrates or nitrites. I think it's nitrates. Okay. All right. So if you have a double positive, and this is an old strip I saved from my mother. This is strip, so that's why it's kind of discolored. It should be pink. That shows a double positive. But if this pad is white and this pad is pink, that means no nitrates, only leukocytes. That points us more to a flare. And the back of the envelope has the colors. Normally it's purple. They turn pink and purple. So whenever, remember flares, the bladder only knows one language: frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. Okay. So you could have a bullet wound and it would feel like an infection. You could have a stab wound. It would feel like infection. You can have an IC flare. It would feel like infection. And the reason why you do a test strip is that will help you differentiate between if it's an infection or if it's a simple flare. And if you've got a double positive, it's an infection. If you've got a single leukocyte, no nitrite, then it's probably just a bladder wall flare. Okay, okay. I've been sitting and I just got a little pinprick in my left butt cheek. I've been sitting too much. I can feel my pelvic floor starting to wonk out while I'm sitting here. Diane said, I asked for pictures, but they were cloudy. Printed out pics, but in black and white, didn't show anything. Diane said, is having steroid injections every 6 months a sustainable treatment option? My new Urogyne said, that's what I should do. I was put under, though, and I don't like being put under every 6 months. Also wonder if doing steroid injections over and over again would damage the tissue. No, I don't think it would damage the tissue. But you raise a very, very important point, and that is that the risk of anesthesia is significant as you get older and older. And so being put under anesthetic twice a year, that's when you really start having a discussion with the anesthesiologist about what they're doing. Because, for example, propofol is ideal for something like this because it's very mild, puts you to sleep very quickly, it wakes you up very quickly, and it doesn't affect your ability to pee afterwards. Some of the old anesthesias actually it silences the nerves in your pelvis, and you might not be able to pee for 12 hours. But for something as simple, you're not having surgery, you're just having a little steroid injection. So you would be able to get away with something like propofol. So to minimize that risk, you would just talk with the anesthesiologist or your doctor about what's the least risky anesthetic they can use if that's something you choose to do. But again, doing something like lactoferrin, which is over the counter, comes from cow colostrum with outstanding research behind it, would be a no-brainer. Anne says, so is E. coli an infection? Absolutely, E. coli is an infection. Well, E. coli is a bacteria that if it grows substantially and begins to dominate your biome, it becomes what we call a pathogenic infection. But E. coli is naturally found in our body in small amounts. The question is, when it grows and prospers and begins to dominate, it damages tissue and can become quite painful. All right. What's happening this week? What is happening this week? I'm hoping that I'm going to finish our flare guide. And that's going to be a printed flare guide that's talking about all the different types of flares with their rescue plans. The first flare guide that also is talking actively about phenotyping, because your phenotype determines the types of flares you're going to have. After that, I will be doing our updated diet guide. After that, we will be doing the IC Optimist spring issue. Might do the Optimist before I start the diet guide. Doing a lot of patient stories. And anybody who wants to tell their story in a Zoom, my goal for this year is to share a lot of patient stories. And so if anybody has an interesting patient story that you might want to talk about publicly in a Zoom that I can record, I think the more patient stories that we can record, the better. But I'm also, for patients who don't want to be on Zoom, I'm telling their story. So if you want your story shared, or you have an interesting or unusual case of IC, you can call me. Our phone number is back there, 800-928-7496 on the top of our website. Or you can pop me an email, icnetwork@mac.com. I want to tell as many stories as I can. Lisa, thank you for the stars. Appreciate it very much. And if you find these meetings helpful, please come on over to the IC Network and buy something in the IC Network shop, or become a member and get our magazine. You can tell I've been talking a lot. My throat's starting to do it. This is our latest magazine. It's called the IC Optimist, because I am an optimist. And this is where we do our best work. And this is how we keep these meetings going. It's $25 for the year to get it electronically. It's $50 if you want us to mail it to you. But we have a lot of other things you get to download on your member page. So you can become a member of the IC Network and get where I think we do our best work. The magazine includes, like, for example, this most recent magazine has the updated food list that everybody's been waited for years, was an updated food list. The articles in this one were so sad. Well, okay, so number one, the new lactoferrin study, so exciting. And in reducing IC flares and reducing Hunner's lesions. So lactoferrin actually prevented flares and reduced Hunner's lesions. We go over that research. Then really sadly here, we had another study come out that showed that the eye damage from Elmiron progresses even after you stop the medication. Lisa says, your Facebook no longer lets you in the live chat. Is you doing something wrong? No, honey, you're in the live chat right now. I'm seeing you. So you're getting mixed messages. Anyway, getting back to Elmiron, devastating new research has emerged from the eye research team at Emory, who were the first to identify retinal disease in patients using Elmiron. They sought to determine if eye and retinal health improved or worsened over time after stopping the med. And unfortunately, what they found is that the damage increased significantly, and that this is critical information for patients who are considering starting this med And for those who might be in litigation and considering settlement offers, I've been saying to every patient who's contacted me about settlement offers that I think your settlement should include lifetime medical care. I mean, eye care, not medical care, eye care. And the reason why I say this is a patient story that I share in this magazine. And her name is changed, but I used the name Anne in this. Anne was diagnosed with IC in the early 1990s and was prescribed Elmiron for approximately 20 years. In 2022, she was declared legally blind from Elmiron-associated pigmentary maculopathy. She had stopped the medication 3 years earlier in 2019. Today, she's filled with rage after learning that retinal damage could worsen after stopping the med. She said, quote, "Nobody told us that this damage could progress," noting that if she had known, she would not have settled for the low amount she received. She said, quote, "I received a totally inadequate settlement given how badly my eyes have worsened in the past few years. The attorneys gallantly shouted that the settlements were tremendous, excellent." She also shared that Medicare is now trying to claim a portion of her settlement to cover retinal testing she had received to a whopping $30,000. We cannot and should not underestimate how these patients have suffered, nor should we invalidate their attempts to seek a recovery. I was asked by a few patients about their settlement offers and encouraged each one to ask for, at a minimum, future eye care and testing. I don't know if any were able to receive lifetime care. But Anne's anger is just. She said, quote, "Who says how much your eyesight is worth when you can't read, see colors, or see your face in the mirror? Is there a dollar amount that compares to the loss of vision due to someone's eagerness to earn money?" She's considering taking additional action against her attorneys who failed to inform her of the published research showing progression before they recommended a settlement. And I think that, she is complete. All she can see is light and dark. She can't read, she can't drive, she can't see her face in the mirror. And her settlement was paltry, especially when the attorneys took 45%. Also in this magazine, we have a new study that showed that antibiotics directly damage the mucosal layer in the bowel and potentially the bladder. When we think about the side effects of antibiotics, we normally think about diarrhea from C, but now we have a study showing that antibiotics physically damage themselves, that it's a chemical irritation or chemically induced damage to the bladder. What else do I have in this magazine? We had an interesting trend in the IC network a couple months ago of patients whose symptoms began after doing extreme weightlifting. That apparently there is a new craze online of doing very, very intense weightlifting. And one patient developed an immediate hernia that had to be surgically repaired, but then he got IC symptoms, and it turned out that he had also badly damaged his pelvic floor. I share the uterosacral ligament finding that the uterosacral ligament could be a weakened uterosacral ligament could lead to bladder symptoms and Hunner's lesions. Talking yet again about the role of childhood trauma and how that changes the nervous system over time, kind of amplifies the nervous system. And there's more. So this is where I think we do our best work. Our best work is in our magazine. Now, I'm going to be real honest and tell you, I've had my financial advisor tell me to stop doing the magazine because they say it's just not making you any money. And my answer is always, but I love doing it. We have to have a source of income for the IC network. And if we don't, I can't do this because we have to pay the bills. And so anyway, I want to try to do this as long as I can, but people are saying I should stop, but I don't want to stop. I want to keep doing this. Okay. Either that or we turn the IC network into a membership website, and that would suck. Nancy said, my doctor has tried to put me on Elmiron so many times, I can't believe how he is still trying. A well-known IC doc too. Well, Elmiron works as a chemical Band-Aid. It's a coating. So if you've got a damaged bladder wall, putting something on top of that damaged bladder wall to protect it makes sense. So Elmiron is really ideal for somebody, say, with estrogen atrophy, genitourinary syndrome of menopause. But we have supplements that can do the same thing without the risks, like Bladder Builder and Bladder Rest. So most patients who did well on Elmiron but want to get off of it, they just switch over to one of the chondroitin-based supplements, Bladder Builder, Bladder Rest, Sister Protect. Those are the ones that they go for. So that's something that you could do, but given its association with retinal disease and now inflammatory bowel disease, it's like, I think what I've heard some doctors say, which I really disagree with, is some doctors will have said, well, I've never seen retinal disease in my office. It must be very rare. And what the research shows is that it's not rare. The research shows that 25% of patients using Elmiron develop retinal problems. That's not 1%, that's a quarter. And that's a bigger risk. And our Pentosan Elmiron eye study showed 52%. And I've got well over 2,000 patients in that study. The problem with that study is that can't rule out genetics, a genetic predisposition to eye diseases. So in the clinical studies that have been done, like by hospitals and by Kaiser Permanente, they were able to rule out all the genetics. And they're the ones who found the 25%. I mean, we've said from day one, my study in survey form could not rule out genetics. So we had to interpret that data knowing that. But we consistently have clinical data in the 25%, and that is not minor. That is a significant population of patients who are at risk for eye issues. Anne said, so I had E. coli in my urine, but it didn't feel like I had a UTI. Well, if you had just a tiny bit of E. coli in your urine, that's fine. It means it was being controlled. But if you had a massive amount of E. coli and you had bladder symptoms, then that's a real easy, you probably have an E. coli bladder infection. Lisa said, maybe you already covered this, but does Elmiron have the same negative retinal effects if it is given in instillation? We don't know for sure. I'm not aware of any research that has addressed that. The assumption is that it would be less risky because putting it directly on the bladder wall as compared to swallowing it where it gets absorbed into your bloodstream, that seems to be much less risky. But let me see if there's been a study on that. That's a really interesting question. Pentosan bladder installations, retina. Okay, that didn't come up. Old studies. They're giving it to patients who are doing bladder cancer therapy to reduce the irritation of the bladder cancer chemicals. Oh, here we go. Okay. Well, no, that's way old. Before they even knew about the eye issue. I just don't think we have enough info right now. So, as an alternative, Lisa, if you didn't want to have an Elmiron bladder installation, swap it out with heparin. A heparin lidocaine installation, known as a rescue install, is by far the most popular therapy done around the world. And heparin is not associated with the risks that Elmiron is associated with. Heparin also acts to coat the bladder wall. So there you go. Cindy said, I've been diagnosed with IC for about 30 years, 10 years before I found the right doctor that took my pain seriously, along with Hunner's lesion. Cindy, I feel like I missed. Oh, okay, I did. Here you go. Cindy writes, I have type 2 diabetes and often wonder if passing too much sugar in urine can cause bladder inflammation. Is there any research on that? It's more likely that most patients who with diabetes are doing a lot of artificial sugar. And artificial sugar is notorious for irritating the bladder wall, especially NutraSweet. I'm not aware, but let me go to the National Library of Medicine. Okay, here's increasing evidence emphasizes the potential relationship between diabetes and overactive bladder. Okay, here, hold on. This is interesting. So diabetes participants' overactive bladder increased by 77% compared with non-diabetic. So glycohemoglobin exhibited a linear association with OAB. In other words, the higher the glycohemoglobin, the higher the hemoglobin. Oh my God, can I even talk right now? The higher that, the higher the OAB. White blood cells significantly mediated the associations between hemoglobin, fasting glucose, and insulin with OAB. And that systemic inflammation was an important mediator of this association. So they're not looking at sugar directly, they're looking at glycohemoglobin. Sugar attached to a hemoglobin? I'm not sure. But they're also correlating it with fasting glucose and insulin. So let me give you the link to the study. And I should do an article on this. This is interesting. That is very, very interesting. I got to put it on my list, my ever-growing list of topics that I want to cover. All right. Fascinating. Cindy said, I had a sacral laminostomy surgery for Tarlov cysts 8 months ago. The surgeon removed my sacral bone and repaired the cyst. This was in the nerve, so I know it's going to take time to heal. You're getting PVT this month. Thank you for all your wonderful info. I tell everyone about your website. Cindy, I'm glad that they found the Tarlov cyst, and I'm glad that you're healing. And Cindy, yours is the perfect story to share. I would love to share your story with others. I'm very against, and I'm worried for the patients, especially from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, who were told they had an incurable disease. I mean, a Tarlov cyst is not a disease. That's a cyst pushing on a nerve affecting your bladder. And I think the more stories like that we can share, the more hope we can give to patients to look beyond this diagnosis of incurable disease and go, I wonder if it's something else. Lisa said, I tend to have a major painful flare right before my period, then it magically disappears. I had the same thing, honey. I know that this is the high point of estrogen, but what causes this pain? Is it physical from the uterus or just hormones or the pelvic floor? It's driving me crazy. It modulates and intensifies pain reception, if I remember correctly. That's very common. I had the same thing. I would flare the day that I ovulated and the day before, a day or two before my period. And I don't remember the exact language, but in multiple studies, they have talked about how women are more prone to having chronic painful conditions because of the role of estrogen. I can tell you, Lisa, that some patients do well when they go on birth control to stabilize the estrogen. The problem is we don't like to do that in the long term because that just causes this whole ripple effect throughout the body. The other challenge here is that when you become perimenopausal, you just go, you would think that the body would gradually reduce estrogen over time, and it doesn't. What happens is it gets very, very random. Very, 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 very random. And it's these random symptoms of high and low that drive the craziness of perimenopause, the tears, the anger, the intense pain. But once you get through that, it goes away. It does go away. I promise you that. Lori says, a few weeks ago, I'd asked about alternatives to estrace due to urethral irritation worsened by use. My gynecologist, you saw your gynecologist. She recommended a hyaluronic acid vaginal product. Starts last week. Good. Let us know how it goes. I guess the only challenge with that is that that's not helping your body produce mucus. That's just giving it the equivalent of mucus. So it's, in the end, doing estrogen is the right thing to do. But if you can't do it, you can't do it. Lori said, doctor recommended Reverie by Bonafide or Rehydrate by Good Clean Love. Hold on. I got to write that down too. Boy, you guys always give me good things to explore. Okay, Susan said, I sent Dr. Evans a message and told him I turned off my interstim. He said I did not have to have it removed. Well, there's a difference between have and want. Listen, I adore Dr. Evans. It would never be in my job or ever disagree with Dr. Evans or to get you to doubt him. I think that he's a wonderful doctor. That said, interstim is a foreign piece of metal in your body or whatever they're making it from now, and your body reacts to that in different ways. Sometimes it compartmentalizes it, builds scar tissue around it, kind of isolates it. The longer it's in, the greater that happens, the harder it is to get it out. And that's particularly true for the little leads. Because the little leads are by your, they're by your nerves. And then if they start getting a little funky, then, so in general, most patients have it removed. Um, just so that you never have to worry about it again. Um, and again, I adore Dr. Evans. I don't want you to think I'm disagreeing with him at all. I'm not disagreeing with him. I'm just saying that many patients in your position would have it taken out and be done with it. Because the longer it's in, the more scar tissue that develops, and the harder it is to take it out. So I think it's really more a question of your choice. The hard part, one of the things that I really disagree with the insurance companies is, so consider your case right now. So your interstim is not working for you. It's not malfunctioning per se. It's just not working and turned off. Some insurance companies will not pay to remove it until you have an adverse event. They will pay when you start having a problem with it. And I don't understand that. I do understand it, that they're just trying to save money. But I think the point is if it's not working, it's not working. Why keep it? Knowing that it over time could become a problem. It could move. It could disconnect. Let me see if safety of interstim device. How would we do this? Safety of interstim device. Here. Should an interstim be removed if it stopped working? I like looking at the research. All right, so hold on. AI is saying if the patient does not feel that he or she is getting adequate benefits, a device removal may be reasonable. Another reasonable option is to move the interstim battery to a different position where it might not cause discomfort. Like that's the thing is if you lost weight and the fat that normally protects it, you lose, then you might start feeling it when you're laying down or sitting down. But hold on, is this a study from 2023? Okay, hold on a second. Let's see this. Remove, okay. Ooh, what? Howard Goldman says removal of sacral neuromodulation devices is an office procedure. The paper he studied. Okay, hold on a second. For certain situations, the device has to be removed. Maybe because you did the permanent lead implantation on the front end and it's about 1 out of every 4 or 5 patients that it doesn't work, so you got to pull the lead out. Or alternately, it may be a patient who had one put in years ago and perhaps is no longer functioning and they don't want to get it revised for a new battery, or they're having pain at the site, or they just want it out. Or they have other problems such that this is not an issue and they just want it out. In the old era, where there were sometimes challenges getting MRIs, if somebody had one of these in, it had to be taken out for them to get an MRI. So there are reasons sometimes, whether it's a lead or the lead and generator, they have to be removed. Traditionally, even to this day, this is typically done in the OR, whether it's under sedation or general. it's done in the OR. I push the envelope of doing things that used to be done in the OR in the office, and things where patients used to stay in the hospital 2 to 3 days after an operation, getting them home the same day. So my thought was, we do this in the office and we use a lot of local anesthesia. To me, there's no reason that this could not be done in the office. Mm. From the time the patient walks into the office, we do the paperwork, we lay them down, we prep the area, we put some drapes on, numb it up, take it all out, sew the incision closed, and then from when they walk in until they leave is perhaps 30 minutes. The actual procedure is anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. By doing it that way, patients don't have to take a full day off work. Are you kidding? You're going to go back to work after having them? No, that's kind of silly. They don't have any preoperative testing. They don't have to do all the pre-op stuff. There's no need for somebody to drive them in. They can drive themselves and drive themselves home. I don't need, okay. So he said, we started doing this years ago. Patients did great. So my standard procedure for the past 5 years has been whenever somebody needs either the lead or the system removed, we do it in the office. When I mention this to people, a lot of them say, oh my gosh, you do that in the office. How do they tolerate it? How is that? How does it go? So we decided to look back at a 5-year picture from 2017 to 2022 to see if it was feasible. And what were their findings? 41 patients. Nobody got an infection. Only one patient needed pain med beyond day 2. I don't know what Robert Evans might think of this. Susan said, my problem is I have absolutely nobody to take me there. Yeah. I'm fixing to lose a lot of weight. You're starting Ozempic tomorrow. Good luck. Cindy says, thank you for your service. You are our advocate. I find that too many doctors are not familiar with IC, and sadly, some think we're just looking for drugs. So thank you, because I've learned a lot since finding you on Facebook. Oh, I'm glad, Cindy. Glad to help. Angela said, I'm having InterStim put in with Dr. Evans next month. He does it with the patient under sedation. Yeah. Yeah, it's normally done under, putting it in is absolutely done under sedation. Taking it out, this other doctor is saying taking it out's easier. You know, and the thing is that Dr. Evans is considered a master surgeon. And so you're in good hands with him, and I really hope that it works. If it doesn't work, then we get to move on to other things. But, you know, he's the best of the best. He won doctor every single time we had patients vote for Doctor of the Year by hundreds of votes. He is truly a beloved doctor and incredibly experienced. Well, I think, okay, we've been going for 2.5 hours now. And he's retiring soon? No, the last time I talked to him, he said he wasn't planning on retiring. Has he publicly said he's going to retire soon? You know, I mean, that's the thing, is some of our best urologists in IC are of his generation, you know, I mean, of my generation. And so many have retired or are retiring. And we're looking for those next generation doctors, and there aren't a lot of them. There are not a lot of them. And again, this is one reason why we have to keep the National Institutes of Health funded. You heard that on what website? I don't think you heard it on my website. I haven't written that because he hasn't told me that he's retiring. Normally, for the big doctors that are doing it, they let me know so I can spread the word. JD, you're very welcome, hon. I'm always happy to be here. I love doing these meetings. So, okay, but so guys, okay, so guys, just so you know, I'm getting rid of one of my internets because it's costing $300 a month. Comcast business, like 295 a month, and the problem is it conks out, and it's not available half of the day. For me to stream on Facebook and YouTube, you're on two separate computers, two separate internets. But I can't afford that anymore. It's just a ridiculous waste of money. And so, and unfortunately, I'm in an area where I don't have fiber. There's no access to fiber here. I'm on a DSL. One is cable, one is DSL. Believe it or not, the DSL one is more reliable, and it's a fraction of the cost. So in 2 weeks, I'm going to lose the ability to stream on one platform. So now I'm looking at other options. Um, I'm thinking what I might do is I might start the support group meeting at like 11 o'clock on one platform, and then we switch it over to the other platform at 1 o'clock. That might be reasonable. Change is coming. We just have to listen. As a business owner, you have to understand this environment has scared the living daylights out of me. What's happening? The tariffs. Can you imagine the supplements going up 25%? They might. What's happening right now in the business sector is terrifying. And I want to try to keep the IC network open. I don't know if that's going to happen with these tariffs. I don't know. And so I have to be smart here, and I've got to save money wherever I can. And I mean, I have never, up until 3 weeks ago, I have never been scared about the future of the IC network. I am scared about it right now because what's happening is irrational craziness. And these tariffs are ridiculous for the short-term effects. Because the problem is that can small businesses survive the short-term effect? Maybe the big businesses can, but the small businesses can't. So we're going to have to adapt. I love my job. I love what I do, but we really need your support right now. That's all I can say. I mean, if the CDC grant, which I was really counting on this year, looks like it might not happen. So Diane said, would it be better to take lactoferrin or prescription antiviral if I test positive for Epstein-Barr? I would say that if you have an active infection, I would do the antiviral first. And then once you finish the course of the antivirus, maybe the lactoferrin for maintenance. That makes the most sense to me. Susan said the IC website. Honey, there are a bunch of IC websites. So the IC network website has never said that. And we are the largest and most recognized IC website out there. But if it was like the Inspire discussion forum for the ICA, that's a wild, wild west, and it's not necessarily accurate at times. So you gotta differentiate between information that you get from social media as compared to information that you get from credible sources. Well, I think we have come to the conclusion of this meeting. We are at almost 3 hours. And so, my friends, my intention, I did not do a drop-in meeting on Facebook on Friday because my pelvic floor hurt and I didn't want to sit here any longer. But hopefully I will do a drop-in meeting this week on Thursday or Friday on Facebook. And then I intend to be back here on Sunday. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. I wish you all the best. I'm going to call it here. Have a great, great week. And come on over to the IC Network and sign up for our free newsletter or become a member. All right? Because I'm here for you as long as you want me to be. All right. Bye, YouTube.